Hello everyone, Miss Hanley here, and today we're going to talk about the formulas for area, perimeter, and circumference. Later we'll go into formulas for surface area and volume. So the first shape that we're going to discuss is a circle, and you guys have seen the formulas for these before, but we just want to sort of refresh your memory on how to use them. So circumference is the same idea as a perimeter. So it's the perimeter of your circle, or the distance all the way around. And the formula for circumference is pi times diameter, or 2 times pi times the radius, or 2 pi r. And that formula comes from a ratio between the radius and circumference, and that magic number pi, which is 3.14 if you don't have a pi button on your calculator. Most of you should. Okay, so the radius, just remember, is the distance from the center point to the edge. So if you were trying to find the radius of your circle, you can either use the value they give you, or it's always half of a diameter. Remember, diameter has to go through the center of the circle, unlike mine, and it is double the length of the radius. Okay, so diameter is twice the radius. So that will tell you the distance all the way around your circle. Okay. The area of a circle is how much space is actually inside your circle. So in order to find that, you want area is equal to pi times the radius squared. Okay, so let's try an example to find circumference and area. So I'm going to say that my radius is about 4 centimeters here. Okay, so if that's my radius, first I want to find circumference, which is just as simple as 2 times pi times the radius, which is 4. So that gives me 8 pi. And if they ask you for exact circumference, leave it as 8 pi. Always label also, so 8 pi centimeters. If they want you to find an estimated answer, this would be about 25.1 centimeters. And I use the squiggles instead of the equal sign to denote that this is about. It's not an exact answer. To find area, we have area equals pi r squared. So we just have pi times 4 squared, since 4 is our radius, which gives me 16 pi, or about 50.3. And this is going to be centimeters squared. Okay, so when you're finding area of a two-dimensional figure, when you just want the area, it's always a square unit. So square feet, square centimeters, square inches, square miles. And when you start to work with volume, that's when your units will need the cubic. So when you have the 3 dimensions there, you're going to need a cubic. When you just have 2 dimensions, like we have with our circle, we're going to use a square. And if it's just perimeter, it's 1 dimension, we're going to use just regular centimeters. Okay? Alright, so next we want to look at the area for a triangle, area and perimeter. So in order to do this, I'm going to give my sides a label. So I'm going to call this side A, this side B, and this side C. And those can be any 3 lengths. Well, perimeter, if you recall, is just adding up the distance around the sides. So this would be A plus B plus C. Okay. The formula for area of a circle is, well, it comes from the area of a rectangle, which we'll get to in a minute, but we pretty much know that already. That is your, that is your width times your length, or length times width. So when we're finding the area of a triangle, we're taking half of a rectangle. So we have to have, in our formula, the 1/2. And then rather than call it length times width, it's going to be our base times the height. And the height has to be an altitude, so you want it to come down from the top of your triangle here, straight down, and make a right angle at the base. And that should connect to your vertex. Okay. So that is your height. And our formula is 1/2 base times height. And you can always decide what you want to be the base. It doesn't have to be the bottom here. But wherever you choose to be the base, that is where your altitude needs to connect and make that 90-degree angle. Okay. So let's try an example here for perimeter. I'm going to say that my base is 12 feet, and C is 10 feet, and A is 10 feet as well. Let's keep it simple. So for my perimeter, we are just going to have 10 plus 10 plus 12, which would give me 32 feet altogether. So all the way around there is 32 feet. For our area, we're going to have 1/2 times the length of the base, which is 12, times the height of the triangle. And it gets tricky here because we actually have to calculate the height. We weren't given a height. Well, we do know that we have a right triangle, so we can use that right triangle to help us. We know that the hypotenuse of that triangle is 10. And if this is an isosceles triangle here, and we have the altitude coming down, the base is getting split in half. So that piece would be 6. And I need to find h for my height. Whenever we have two sides of a right triangle, remember that we can use Pythagorean Theorem. So we would have, let me erase this here, we would have h squared plus 6 squared, and remember 6 came from the base here, is equal to 10 squared. This is also a Pythagorean triple if you recall, but if we keep going, we have h squared plus 36 equals 100. Take away your 36, and so h squared is equal to 64. And last step is taking the square root. So we find out that our height is actually 8. Okay. So after all that, we end up with an answer of 8 feet for our height of the triangle. And again, remember that has to be the altitude. Multiplying all these things together, and if you would rather use 0.5 instead of 1/2, you can. Or you can do 12 times 8 and divide it by 2. You should end up with 48, and this will be feet squared. Okay, so remember, B stands for your base, and H is your height, which is like your altitude. Okay.